How's it going, everybody? Warriors then just ended and I have a lot to say. So much actually that we'll shift the Lawbringer part to a separate video. Yes, you will get a whole video of me ranting about the Ad Mortem abomination. For now, we'll just look at the patch notes for next week. That means the introduction of the Dodge testing grounds and the Jormungandr testing grounds. But before that, I want to talk about a tiny little segment from Stefan. Something he didn't even want to mention apparently. And oh yeah, the background footage is the Pirate Hero skin, so enjoy seeing a lot of Pirate, I'm sure Reddit will love it. But back to Stefan's hint. He said they are working on a performance mode for certain hardware. No date, no details, so calm down. It's all speculation at this part. Here's what I think it'll be. I think it's a 120 FPS mode for new gen, meaning, no my dear old gen players, this will most likely not be a 60 FPS mode for you. And even if it is, you will not have the benefits that you think you will. 60 FPS old gen versus a 60 FPS new gen, well, there is still a solid 80 to 100 ms of input delay difference between the two. I know this is not what anybody wants to hear, but this is the sad reality of decade-old hardware. But it's a great initiative from Ubisoft. More hardware parity is very much appreciated, but we also need to have realistic expectations of it. I'm looking forward to what they manage to give to the console player base. It can only be beneficial. There is no downside really. But moving on, patch notes now. The Dodge testing ground is coming in all its glory, or rather, whatever the opposite of glory is, because this is certainly not what I was hoping for, considering the feedback we gave. First change, all dodge attacks are now light parries, except for feintable dodge attacks. I've made multiple videos about this, explaining why this is a terrible idea, offered the input from lots of top players, but I guess it was too much of a huge bait for the low skill bracket to pass it up. This is an awful change on so many levels. Dodge attacks aren't equal, and neither should be their punishes. If dodge attacks can be different, then so can be the punishes for them. Knowing these punishes isn't too much to ask. Especially when there are very special dodge attacks like Nobushi's Sidewinder. How in the actual fuck does that move deserve to be a light parry? It makes zero sense, like none whatsoever. The dodge attack spam argument is one of the dumbest I've seen in a long time by the community. I've said it dozens of times in the past. This will not fix it. People will still mindlessly dodge attack out of your chain, and if somebody knows what they're doing, they are target swapping that thing anyways. The moment you get better at the game, meaning you escape your fucking bum fight reality or whatever it is, you will realize how fucking awful a change it is, and what you might have praised before will soon annoy you massively. But moving on, delay windows of dodge attacks. Nearly all of them are 200 to 400 into the dodge now. Exceptions, as listed, JJ, Tiandi, Warden and Warmonger. The old promise of better windows remaining, well, that's no more. So Orochi, Shaman, Zerker, etc. are all 200 to 400 now as well. The change at its core is great, since this allows for consistent punishes of many low recovery bashes. The ones where you previously got blocked, those you will punish consistently now if you buffered the attack correctly. But these exceptions aren't nearly enough. I will only talk about one, and that is Junhu. Junhu currently has a static 400 ms input window. Combined with the Garbreak vulnerability of the attack itself, this allowed for feint to Garbreak to land against it. This is now no longer possible. It is something the lower skill bracket massively whines about. They want all dodge attacks to be Garbreakable. Now you have one more that isn't. And the attack itself is unreactable to 99% of the player base. So Junhu will now not only be able to consistently punish everything, the dodge attack will basically serve as a legit opener, and since he has dodge recovery cancels, this can be quite easily spammed. So yes, enjoy your dodge attack spam, folks. A dodge attack with superior block frames on it that changes a 9 damage attack to a 22 damage unblockable dodge attack. I'm glad you all gave good feedback here, so we can enjoy this interaction. Then, side dodge bashes are all 600 ms at a minimum and cannot change. This guarantees a guard break when dodged pretty much every single time. Since the bash is a lot slower now, this shifts the guard break vulnerability a little, since it obviously starts later, since the bash itself lasts longer. This allows for punishes on the reaction to seen as side dodge bash. It brings it in line with reaction parrying dodge attacks for light parry punishes. If this is inconsistent, which I don't think it is, then we'd have a discrepancy that needs to be addressed. Everybody should suffer the same amount, no exceptions. Next up, no guard while dodging anymore. Everyone behaves like Valkyrie now. Superior block frames have been adjusted to be the same as a deflect, conk and kensei were the two culprits here really. The middle portion of this with the guard coming up I want to test in game. I will record some before and after clips to make sure I understand this correctly. Overall, this will make heroes way more vulnerable in team fights, and good hitboxes don't require the unblockable property to make a serious dent in somebody's health bar anymore. This change is quite impactful, and I can see people reacted negatively to this for the first few weeks, but I'm convinced we'll quickly get used to it. This should be a positive change in the long run. This particularly buffs orange-blue mix-ups from top in a 1v1 against heroes like Warlord or Raider for example, since they can no longer park their guard on top and then just dodge to avoid everything. Then the last slide of the dodge TG, you will now keep your iframes when dodging into obstacles. Obstacles can be walls, players, minions, or Lawbringer players' imaginary friends. You cannot be boxed in and bashed ad infinitum with you being not able to get away. When we tested this during the actual testing rounds back then, we realized that attacks of enemy minions would still remove the iframes. They haven't mentioned this during the stream, but I hope this has gotten fixed as well. But yeah, that's it for the dodge TG. I think it's a net negative sadly. It has good aspects, but the bad ones sadly overshadow it. I'm not happy with the implementation here, and it saddens me that Chasey said that the overall feedback from the community was very positive. Just shows how truly clueless the majority is, if this is what came from the surveys. Alright, on to happier things. Jormungandr rework is coming. They didn't change much from the initial TG, so if you're completely unfamiliar with what they changed, please watch my old video first, because I'll mostly compare him to that. I don't like how Ubisoft slides are showing the changes to the live version. It is a little confusing. But oh well, I'll try and explain as best I can. First, the obvious, stamina bullying is gone. It's all about the displacement now. Part of the displacement comes from the new guard break follow-up. Press heavy on a guard break and it will do damage and move your opponent around, which can lead to a wall splat. You can decide which side you throw them towards. The heavy now does 12 damage. That was feedback we gave. We wanted that to be lower damage, so that's a great start. The chain heavies, which are still unblockable, also displace and potentially wall splat. Damage went down to 24 for top and 22 for sides. Once again, that is a good change. Low damage is very good here, especially since this mix-up can loop into itself if you do get the wall splat. A wall splat does confirm a neutral top heavy for 22, or side if you want, and that's 20. Both these moves also add their damage reduced, which is great. Once again, I want this for more heroes, not just George. But to give you the wall splat numbers then. From a guard break, you can get a 34 damage punish, and from a finish heavy wall splat, the damage is 44 or 46. Both these mix-ups loop into itself, like I said before, so we'll have to continuously defend against the unblockable or the bash, which we will talk about in a second. First, we talk about the in-chain zone. Fully armored, 800 ms zone that does 24 damage and costs 12 stamina. No unblockable, it's just armored. You can use this after every move, except for the move itself, the guard break heavy, or the slam. You can also chain out of it. The last slide of the rework mentions the chain link timings, which were the most problematic of that move in my opinion. Because the concept of the move is great. Having an on-demand big hitbox move with armor in a teamfight, well, that is fantastic. The problem was the gap between moves was too big. 466 ms chain links on some to be exact, which meant your armor will be very late, which made the move highly interruptible despite having such a great hype armor startup time. JC didn't give us numbers and he said the adjustments were small, but since they identified it as an issue just like us, this gives me hope here. I will frame check these next week and give you guys an in-depth explanation then whether the move is working in its intended fashion. Then the guard break light does 10 damage now, which allows you to get a 22 damage guard break because light confirms another light. The Enchain Bash seems to be unchanged from the initial testing round. My big gripe was its range, but they didn't mention anything about it, so I'll have to test myself next week. The Slam got its damage adjusted down to 30 and it has lost the armor property from the life version, as well as the unblockable property from the testing rounds. This makes it easier to peel, as well as defend against in case of an early wake up. Then the Neutral Bash is a Legion Kick variation now, meaning a 500 ms bash after a dodge with a 300 ms input, and no chaining on a whiff. Furthermore, they did change the light opener animations. From speaking with the reaction monsters, these new animations seem to be easier to react to, since they have a lot of movement. So they do look similar to the heavies, but because it's fast and janky, they can discern them. Which is quite interesting actually. The chain links have lost their undodgeable property, which I personally dislike, but I can understand the reasoning behind it. But I do want more blue moves. Here it would fuck with dodge attack spam, you know, the term we all love. But since that apparently wasn't the issue, but the heavy parry property, I guess we don't need them anymore. And yes, I'm being facetious here. Serpent Smite is the forward dodge attack, which is now faster with a faster hyper armor startup, damage lowered by 4 down to 22. It should be a really solid move now. And then the right part here is the chain links for the in-chain zone that I explained before. And that's it for George. Overall, he seems to be really strong in-chain and a little lacking from neutral. I absolutely love the damage adjustments and hope we'll see that approach for more heroes. And we're moving on to 3 Afeera bug fixes. It's basically everything we had hoped for. Tier 1 feat doesn't confirm the Tier 3 anymore. Then the run-in heavy landed or blocked no longer confirms the in-chain kick. And the same goes for the buffered guard swap problem with the in-chain kick. I have a video of the latter 2 interactions, so if you're interested in why this is a thing, go and watch those. They most likely adjusted the chain links. I will investigate next Thursday, so we'll have some concrete numbers. But all 3 changes are very welcome. This now should be the Afeera baseline on which we can judge the character. For now, I don't see any further adjustments coming anytime soon. And that's it for today. I will address the Lawbringer changes over the weekend. This absolute abomination that they presented is just too much for me right now. It's like they listened to all the Reddit cretins and implemented it all. This is so genuinely awful. I still don't quite believe it happened. But yeah, if they release the patch notes, they will be linked down below. For now, this is everything I have to say. Hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Laters, everybody.